repeated viewing and the recording has now begun. Robert? Yep, thank you. I'm going to ask Julie for the Sedran and apologies, please.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, members. Provost Jim Todd.
Yeah.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Yeah.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
Yes, I'm here, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor John McFadgen.
Yeah.
I have an apology from Councillor John McGee. Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Maureen Mackay.
Apologies from Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. Councillor David Richardson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor James Adams. Councillor Lillian Jones.
Present, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Linton.
Yeah.
Councillor Douglas Reid.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Here.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Here, Julie.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here.
Councillor Peter Mabin.
Present.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Here. Thanks.
Councillor Linda Holland.
Here, thank you.
Deputy Provost Claire Leach.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
Councillor William Lennox.
Yeah.
Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
Councillor Billy Crawford. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, can see, thank you. Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Neil Watts.
Present.
Councillor Drew Filson. Councillor Jennifer Hogg.
Here.
And Councillor Elaine Stewart.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Julie. Members, just quickly, East Ayrshire Federation of Tenants and Residents at Centre Stage attended the opening. That's where their new offices are. And they had representatives down from Cockmanshire and they're delighted with their new home. So wish them all the best. Please, everyone, try and pay them a wee visit. They would really like that. Then we had the Ukrainian Children event at the Home of Football, Rugby Park. It was a pleasure to attend the day where Captain Fantastic Monty, talking to the council, agreed with a great idea for Kelly football strips, tracksuits and trainers were given to all the children who are residing in East Ayrshire. So we've got a whole host of new Kelly supporters. Good for them. Cunningham Housing Association Annual Tenants Conference, 28th of July at Seamull Hydro. And the theme there was Back Together for the Future. So they're looking at their new house building programme. Various organisations were there on the day. A very informative and enjoyable day. Let's Celebrate. That was the Loud Musical Society and Broadway concert. The New Lay Cut, 30th of July. And we were entertained by a whole host of different Broadway shows. It was a great evening and what a great venue. Well done to David Cameron for bringing that church into the community. The Howth Burns Club wreath laying on the 31st of July at the Cross. 31st of July commemorates the printing of Burns's first edition in Kilmarnock at John Wilson's press. There's been a week of Burns activities all through the town, and there were over 25 organisations from the World Burns Federation there on the day, including representatives from Canada. So well done to them. Cunningham Housing Association again at Brickhouse Hill Road. It was cutting the sod for the 101 houses that are going to be there for Cunningham Housing. Some of them adapted for special needs and older and ambulant people. So hopefully it's the wee house company that is building them. It's the first time that Cunningham has used that type of building process. So hopefully that works out okay. Alzheimer's Scotland and College Wine went in and gave a wee talk to some lovely people in there. I know a few of them, and I met an old ex-Matlow who was delighted to talk to another ex-Matlow, and he's now involved, which he wasn't before, but he's now involved with the Legion, and it's great to get him out and about because he was quite lonely, and that's him going along at the breakfast clubs now, so good for him. Cumnock Town Hall, a few of us were there for the epic East Ayrshire Pipe Band Academy. And these young children have only been practising and playing drums and pipes for 2 years through COVID on their own, through Zoom. And I didn't hear a duff note, and that's the truth. They were absolutely brilliant. A great night. Ayrshire College Connecting Communities End of Summer Celebration. Again, these are great days. put on with the college about sport, about all young girls and boys doing all the sport that they can do. And it was a lovely day, so it was good to be part of that. New Mills Gala Day, 6th of August, a wee bit blowy. Me and Kevin had to hold the tent down, but that was okay. It was a lovely day, and it was great to see New Mills coming together. And finally, as you're aware, as a council, we've chosen motor neuron disease as a charity for the next couple of years. We had a meeting with Margot McGowan, who's their representative. She talked about some of the work that the charity undertakes. And our key aim, and we explained this, is to raise awareness for this very worthy charity. And it's great to see Heart of Midlothian, after Rugby Park, in my opinion, the best place to see football. It's great to see them supporting the charity. So well done to Margot, and we'll keep you up to date as things go along through that process. So thanks for that. I'm going to go on to declarations of interest now, and that's page 2. I think we're all understanding now how this process works, but if there are any clarifications that you need, David's on hand to help out. David.
Thanks, Provost. Having regard to the business on the agenda, unless any members have any interest or employment or family members employed anywhere that might be affected by the proposals for the changes to the health and social care arrangements, or unless any members are a member of either of the bodies referred to in item 7, then I wouldn't anticipate any others. But as always, as you know, Provost, members know it is for members. They best know their own business. Whether anyone has anything else we're not cited on to declare just now.
Thanks, David. So members, having had sight of the papers over the last few days, are there any members who want to declare an interest at this point? Nope, we're okay. Thanks for that. Thank you. On to item 2 now. This is the previous minutes for council, pages 3 to 12, and I move the minutes as a correct record.
Second, Provost.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost. Are there any questions? We're okay. Thanks for that. Item 3 is the Cabinet Committee minutes. These are submitted for approval, and I think Councillor Reid's going to move en bloc as usual. Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Provost. I'll move as a correct record.
Second that, Provost.
Leader and Deputy Leader, thanks for that. Any questions? Okay, thank you. On to item 4 now, and this is a quick item. It's a change from SNP Group to replace Councillor Clark, who will replace Councillor Maitland on the Member Officer Working Group on Gambling Harms. Members agreed? Thank you. Item 5 is the National Care Service Scotland Bill, and this is the response to the Scottish Parliament Health, Social Care and Sport Committee, and it's the call for views, a long-standing item over the last year, pages 45 to 73, and we'll ask Craig to introduce this item. Craig.
Thanks, Provost, and good morning, members. So, as Provost says, this is to present for approval of members a joint response from both the Council and the IGIB to the Parliament's Health, Social Care, Sports Committee call for views on the National Care Service Scotland Bill. The recommendations are at paragraph 2 of the report. We'll come to them at the end, if that's okay. So in terms of the background, page 46 of the papers outlines here just the route from the Feely report through to the independent review of adult social care, to the initial consultation that's previously been considered by Council, through to the draft bill, which was laid before Parliament on the 20th of June, through to this, our response to the initial call for views from the Health, Social Care and Sports Committee. I won't rehearse all of that history. It's here for members' information, other than to say that pretty much the key messages that were agreed in the terms of the initial consultation response are absolutely still relevant, and that's what's starting to play through here, is just how we start to get to some of the specifics of it now in terms of the alignment of our initial response and what that draft bill now looks like. So the key messages to the joint response in terms of the initial consultation are listed at the bullet points at paragraph 12 of the covering report. And again, I won't go through the detail of them. They're there for information. In terms of the National Care Service Scotland Bill itself, it was laid, as I said, before Parliament on the 20th of June of this year. It would make Scottish ministers accountable for adult social care in Scotland. The bill would allow Scottish ministers to transfer social care responsibility from councils to the new national service. Could include adult and children's services, as well as other areas such as justice social work, with the power to transfer social work and social care staff from local government employment across to the new National Care Service and to transfer associated functions as well. Ministers would also be able to transfer healthcare functions and resources from the NHS to the proposed National Care Service. It does, however, explicitly state within the draft legislation that there would be a prohibition of transfer of staff from the NHS to the new National Care Service. In terms of the timeframes covered in the covering report as well, clearly we, at this point, we're asked to submit our evidence or our views to the lead committee, which, as I've already mentioned, is the Health, Social Care and Sports Committee. That submission is due to be made by the 2nd of September. The committee will undoubtedly call for evidence to be heard as well, and invite interested parties along to give evidence in person to the committee, and thereafter they'll produce a full report that will go to Parliament in terms of the ongoing debate of the legislation, and if it should go ahead and proceed to stage 2 or be rejected. In terms of the call for views, includes a range of questions on the bill, questions around about the specific financial memorandum and some of the other memorandums attached to it as well. And respondents are invited to complete the parts of the consultation that are of most interest to them. So for us and the IJB, clearly we've taken the opportunity to complete and submit, or propose to submit, a full response to all of that consultation. In terms of the response to call for views, it's attached to Appendix 1. We'll go through that in a bit of detail just shortly. Probably just worth highlighting that it went to the IJB for their consideration last week, a draft version of the paper at least. A number of additional bits of information were included in this report today on the back of some of those comments that were made at the IJB. It was generally a really positive conversation at the IJB in terms of full support for the response that was due to be submitted. As I say, there's a few areas where the opportunity has been taken just to strengthen the language roundabout parts of it, and to include a couple of extra areas as well. In the previous response, key messages highlighted the success and effectiveness of integration across East Ayrshire, and particularly noted our concerns that the proposals for the change identified within the consultation were to fundamental and unintended consequences for our communities. We included examples of the innovations and high quality services that we deliver here in East Ayrshire, and again we're just taking an opportunity here to reinforce some of those key messages. Probably important to know as well that there's a whole range of professional groups and national associations also engaged in this process as well, and they will clearly submit their own responses in terms of their own professional viewpoints. So Marion, myself, Joe, Eddie, all the senior officers through their respective professional groups will be having an input into their own respective responses there as well, and clearly those will also be submitted from the various groups in early course. The broad concerns, risks and issues, as well as the best practice that we identified in the consultation response, does remain really relevant now, and it absolutely forms the basis of this submission, as hopefully you'll see when we start to talk through the detail within the appendix. I said this before, and it absolutely remains the case that this is probably the most significant piece of public service reform that any of us have seen in the last number of years. At a local level, our council and NHS Ayrshire and Arran have been really ambitious in delivery of integrated health and social care services through the integration scheme that was established in 2014 that's seen the IJB come into being. For us, that wasn't just about adult services, which we had to delegate, but also incorporated children's services and justice services as well. The IJB is an integral part of our community planning partnership arrangements, as is the oversight of the alcohol and drugs partnership that forms part of that. But our partnerships go far beyond just health and social care, so a whole approach to wellbeing reaches across into housing, education, leisure, and across all our support services as well. You can turn now to the draft response, which starts at page 53 of the papers. Again, the early parts of it, in terms of the introduction, highlight again our story of success and what strong integration can look like, and what it can deliver in those areas where integration is strong. Returning to the committee specific questions, and I appreciate your forbearance here. It is quite a lengthy document, but I think it's important just to highlight the key points. We absolutely welcome the ambition that's outlined within the draft bill round about how we need to improve the delivery of social care services across Scotland, and I absolutely support many of the recommendations within the Feely report. We do, however, have fundamental concerns about the unintended consequences for our communities and the workforce, and its considerable significant disruption that this could cause to the work that we're already leading. And we'll probably see mention of words as we go through the document as well about disintegration. I think that's an important part for us, that the integration of services has been really strong for us, and we see this as a start of disintegration of those services. We strongly believe that the proposed structural changes and transfer of accountability to unelected boards presents a significant risk to the services that we currently deliver and deliver well, and has the potential to result in negative impacts for our communities, those we serve, and indeed our workforce as well. We don't believe there's been any consideration given to the cumulative impact on local government services and indeed NHS services, and we believe also that there are still too many questions and unknown factors within the consultation to allow this to be fully informed. There is no assessment of potential whole public service impact, and there is a significant possibility that the transitional arrangements would risk a real reduction in the quality of services that we deliver. Policy memorandum readily dismisses options for improvement within the current governance arrangements, so fundamentally the question I think we're asking here is that structural change truly needed? Transferring accountability for social care, social work and community health to Scottish ministers, and that centralisation of powers, it is stated within the documentation, will deliver consistency and improve user experience. However, it's not clear how this will be delivered, nor is it evidenced anywhere within the documentation just exactly where that significant variation can be eradicated. The ambition to deliver and improve quality, consistency and standard of care is also welcomed, and it is an ambition that we will also share in East Ayrshire. National standards and approaches can have an important role to play in driving improvement. National Care Service absolutely will have a leadership role, a key leadership role in delivering this. The whole one-size-fits-all approach, however, is something that I think fails to adequately reflect and meet the needs of different areas. And we know that within East Ayrshire we have some really quite particular needs that we understand well, and we build our services round about that. Again, strongly believe paragraph 17, local decision making and accountability through existing and emerging local relationships and partnerships allows us to have pace and flexibility around about what we do, and we are extremely concerned that the proposals made lead to an erosion of local accountability and democracy. And again, that's a theme you start to see throughout the whole response here in terms of that local democratic accountability. We clearly support the principles of a person-centred human rights approach, ethical commissioning, procurement, fair work, education, training, professional standards right across the health and social care workforce. That goes without saying. We are particularly concerned that the case for a National Care Service has been made on the basis that in some areas integration has been less successful, and that the collaborative leadership, financial planning and commissioning have not been well developed, and that centralising accountability will in some way remedy this. This is absolutely not our experience in East Ayrshire, and again I think we need to make that really strongly in our response here. We have, through effective and innovative use of our reserves and the transformation programme, invested in early intervention, prevention approaches across the sectors, and we see successes in that in terms of preventing admissions to hospital and supporting our people to stay in our communities. We do have strong evidence, and we start to talk about this again throughout our response here. The paragraphs 21, 2 and 3, we talk about some of those particular evidence bases already, round about delayed discharges, round about how we identify local need through community engagement and participation, and the concerns that we have round about a National Care Service potentially eroding or eliminating that. As I mentioned previously, we took the decision when the Integration Joint Board came into being to delegate all of the social work service to recognise a whole family approach to providing support and care. So for us that also includes children's and justice services. There was a lot of debate and consideration of that at the time. It wasn't an easy decision to come to, but there was, as I say, based on those really detailed analyses and conversations, it was our considered view at the time that by putting those services in, it absolutely reflected the best way of delivering services and the whole family approach that we wanted to take. We would absolutely want to see the continued inclusion of children and justice services within the integration arrangements, but that would only work for us, and we make this point clear in paragraph 23, that only works for us in the context of that being within local partnerships. The arrangements outlined in the bill for centralised control do not give us confidence of that local joint accountability. We are really concerned, and again this is hopefully apparent throughout the response, there is too great a focus on in the proposals on structural change in terms of what a national care service should look like and how it would be structured. And we're really concerned that will overshadow and potentially delay some of the important work that we need to take forward in terms of service delivery and improving outcomes. Paragraph 26, in response to, is there anything we see missing within the bill? We are extremely disappointed that there's no reflection on where integration has worked well or where the current arrangements, legislation and structures could be used to support and drive further improvement. The bill itself, we believe, is founded in negative experiences outlined within the Feely report. It doesn't have a full analysis of why those experiences occur, and indeed we believe that they could be remedied without actually dismantling the current structures and establishing something quite different. There's more evidence in paragraphs 28 through to 30 in terms of some of the good work that we have taken forward in relation to our ICT teams, the multidisciplinary working that we take forward, and how that contributes towards the avoidance of harm, hospital readmissions and long-term care home admission. And you'll need to look at our performance against the rest of Scotland to see how that works through. Care at home service, again, is very, very strong and delivers a really high quality responsive care within an efficient and sustainable service. Again, we wanted just to highlight that in terms of some of the evidence round about what works well locally. We have developed new career pathways. We've put in place a learning development resource called the Social Care Learning Hub to absolutely develop and continue to invest in our workforce. There are some omissions in the bill. Paragraph 33 noted round about the role of the Chief Social Worker, which Marion undertakes for us, and indeed the recognition of the local government workforce, the importance of arrangements within community planning partnerships, and the critical links across between us and across all of those other service areas, including, as I mentioned before, health, education, housing. But importantly, we hasn't considered things like TUPE, the pension arrangements, collective bargaining arrangements, and how we deal with our trade unions, and indeed the costs associated with moving to a national care service at the scale that is currently proposed. There's no clarity in how the reform agenda that is proposed will support the achievement of the ambition and aspiration as set out in the promise. As you'll recall, that's particularly around about our children and those who've experienced care. And we are really concerned, and again, this will feed through into other sections of the response, that the actions being proposed here may lead to unintended consequences around the ability to actually deliver against that 10-year change agenda programme as set out within the promise. There's no indication of how a national care service would drive quality improvement in care homes, ensuring that quality and standards come before profit. Social work services have got extensive statutory responsibilities in respect of public protection in Scotland, but that's not just about the social care services. It's very much about working across multiple local organisational boundaries and settings. Public protection processes reflect really complex, mature, integrated multi-agency working, and again, just at paragraphs 36 through to probably 40, 41, outline some of the risks and concerns that we have around about what this potentially could mean for public protection, whether that be for adult protection, child protection, MAPA, and some of those other really important areas that we look at as well. I think the NCS, if we say paragraph 41, the proposals need to be much clearer about public protection governance in order to make sure that we can safeguard those existing local arrangements that work well, but particularly to make sure that we can protect and look after the risks that we see in terms of our most vulnerable people. The framework nature of the bill, as I mentioned before, means that it's not possible to assess if it meets the aims of the policy objectives. It doesn't go into enough detail. It's also very unclear if meeting the aspirations of the bill is unaffordable, as the financial memorandum doesn't include many aspects of the future secondary legislation that we've yet to see. Again, as I mentioned before, there's limited analysis of why the current system does not meet people's aspirations, and there's therefore a very real risk that structural change will do little to address this if we don't actually understand what the problem is in the first case. But again, as we talk through the response to the specific question at paragraphs 45 onwards, again, we're really focusing on the cumulative impact across local government and NHS services, and indeed no assessment of the potential whole public service impact that this could have. Again, we're starting to talk there about the disintegration of mature, strong partnership working and delivery models that we pride ourselves on here in East Ayrshire. We think this will fundamentally undermine long-standing shared principles that seek to strike a balance between national policy direction, responsiveness to local need, and importantly, democratic accountability to the local population for the services that we deliver. think it's important to just recognise that local authorities do have a solid reputation for improvement activity. It's something that the Accounts Commission look at regularly through their best value reviews. And again, we see that reported on favourably, certainly at a local level, but also across the other areas of Scotland as well. Talk a bit here as well about primary care services. And while we are supportive of that being within the scope of local boards, I think what we're keen also to understand is that we have the flexibility to aggregate that up to see delivery at a slightly more aggregated level. So while individual IJBs at this point in time have responsibility for delivering and managing primary care services, it's actually aggregated up and delivered at a pan-Ayrshire basis that we take the lead for, because it makes more sense to do that, as is the case for some other areas as well. In terms of the statement of benefits, which is included within the document pack, to deliver on that, and particularly investment referred to within the principles, this will require significantly more resource than health and social care partnerships have had to date. And clearly, sitting in my seat, that's something that we would absolutely welcome in terms of that increased investment. However, we do strongly believe that those additional resources should be directed towards delivering personalised care and support, joint early intervention, prevention approaches, but not about structural change. We need to make sure that the money is targeted on delivering services. The implications of national pay terms and conditions will require significant investment to bring all social care workers to an equal position, not only in pay, but also in terms and conditions, including pension rights. If we are, by definition, to include all social care workers in there, that will clearly include those currently employed within the private and independent sector. The range of impact assessments accompany the bill will hopefully assist Parliament in understanding, predicting and evaluating the environmental, health, social, economic impacts of the proposals, and that's clearly to be welcomed. I think, however, as a minimum, we would also want to understand the impact on health boards, local authorities and health and social care partnerships, who are most likely to be impacted by the bill. There is also no impact assessment or analysis on the impact of the workforce and of the wider market. There also needs to be key consideration given to the views of people who use health and social care services, carers, and opportunities for broad and wide engagement round about the proposals. Failure to do this, given everything that the government has said round about the independent review of adult social care, could quite clearly and easily be seen as a breach of trust. Turning to the financial memorandum, paragraph 61 through to 67 of the submission, and again I won't go through and repeat everything we've said before, because this very much aligns to what we said in the initial consultation response. But as a partnership, we can evidence collaborative working and investment in prevention and early intervention services, recognising that that's what we need to do to prevent the bad stuff that happens typically further down the line. And we are seeing the consequences of the positive impact that that's having in terms of fewer emergency admissions into hospital, reducing bed occupancy rates, and indeed just an overall improving performance landscape for the partnership. Independent review of adult social care estimated a total additional expenditure of around £660 million per annum. What we're now seeing, however, is the scope of the National Care Service being much broader and wider, and clearly the funding required would therefore be substantially higher than that initial anticipated £660 million. And again, making the strong point of paragraph 65 that the additional resources should be directed towards service delivery, not structural change. The bullet points at paragraph 66 just rehearses much of what our earlier consultation response and comments said. There's probably a few specific issues that I could highlight and just draw out there. Round about support services, round about additional costs and admin and support services that a National Care Service would absolutely be required to deliver. The potential to cause financial shocks as budgets and contributions from NHS and councils are disaggregated and delivered directly to a National Care Service. Probably important to note, just within Ayrshire, the collective budget responsibility for the three IJBs is in the region of £750 million. It's a significant amount of money that we're talking about here. And the movement of those budgets and fundings from both council and NHS board budgets will mean that what's left behind will be significantly less than it is just now, and clearly the impact of future budget savings and cuts clearly would then have to be managed within a much smaller initial sort of settlement area. The final bullet point there, again, we've highlighted this consistently just to make sure that it's not lost, is that the VAT status of these new boards and how that service is delivered is an area that absolutely needs to be addressed, and that is crucially important because the amount of money involved in that VAT position would be incredibly significant, and we need to ensure that a VAT neutral position can be secured. and that will be very challenging. It's also important to note that local authorities, and probably should also say NHS boards within there, can't absorb any additional costs that arise because of the introduction of the bill. If this is to be done and done properly, then it needs to be resourced adequately. The next sections on the response talk about some of the specific questions that go through chapter by chapter. I won't go through all of them because there's a fair bit of repetition here in terms of the specific questions that have been asked. There's a few bits that I have highlighted that there's maybe just the first time I've mentioned them. We do believe that some of the changes, or most of the changes being proposed, could be achieved by more proportionate legislative measures. Some of the legislation already exists that could be used differently, just to deliver against what the proposals are here. We do need to absolutely recognise the importance of local leadership, operational management, and making integration successful. And again, I think that highlights our success in East Ayrshire. The proposals fail to acknowledge the powers that IJBs already have in relation to utilising directions to commission and contract services through our existing arrangements, and it's unclear how the new proposals will significantly change or drive better outcomes as a consequence of that. Importantly, in terms of governance, the number of care boards is not specified within the bill. I think it does say they wouldn't exceed 32, so clearly they wouldn't be any lower a level than the current local government landscape, but it doesn't actually state what the preferred number would be. There is no requirement for Scottish ministers to consult local communities and determine what that will look like, and clearly that's a concern for us. Our response states quite clearly that we think the proposal should align with local government boundaries. We strongly believe that should be the case, it should remain the case. And if, for example, it was aligned at a greater level, for example, at NHS board level, then that would have serious implications for local authorities and for local democratic accountability. In terms of strategic planning, we have a strategic planning group within the IJB. That's a statutory function, and we absolutely recognise and welcome the opportunities to maintain that. And it is our view that all strategic planning and ethical commissioning should be required to align with our local outcome improvement plans, the LIPs. If where possible, all our strategic planning should be as streamlined as possible to avoid duplication. That's what we do currently, and we want to see that continue. In terms of ethical commissioning, we already have strong ethical commissioning approaches in place, very much person-centred, rights-based, and delivering the aims within our strategic plans. Scotland XL undertakes a national role in there as well, some of which is proposed to fall within the scope of the National Care Service. That's a concern for us. And again, I think just the whole issue in terms of local versus national needs to be considered in relation to the commissioning approach as well. In terms of independent advocacy, this is a real strength in East Ayrshire. The East Ayrshire Advocacy Services is something we work very, very closely with them, and we're absolutely proud to do so. And attention towards independent advocacy services are absolutely welcome. However, it's the one size fits all, and not losing sight of the local approaches is something we absolutely don't want to lose sight of here. In terms of complaints and the ability to deal with complaints, we and I always have had this focus on first stage of resolution, and that the principles behind that is that it has to be kept local to allow that first stage resolution to take place close to the operational matter. I think by raising that to a national level gives us real concerns around about how a complaints procedure could be dealt with nationally, and we'll try to tease that out within our response here. In terms of membership of the care boards, we absolutely welcome, as we do currently, broad representation to reflect the range of interest and contribution to our health and social care services. Importantly, that should include people with lived experience, families and carers. And as I say, we currently do have that representation within our IJB. Further noted in principle, and it is very much in principle, it would be possible for Scottish ministers to remove an elected member from a care board. While that wouldn't impact on the ability to sit within the council, it clearly draws into question the whole democratic or the principle of subsidiarity in terms of democratically elected members being removed from a body by a Scottish minister. That's highlighted in paragraph 92, and I think it's quite an important one just to highlight here. In terms of paragraphs 97 through 99 of the response, just talks about the allocation of care functions as the definition within the bill. From our perspective, this is about the services and the functions that would be transferred, allocated across to the National Care Service. Essentially, ministers could transfer staff and property from local government to a new nationalised care service, and the risk that we see around about that is a reluctance, a clear reluctance to invest in these services over the next 4 or so years until the transfer takes place, recognising that responsibility will change at that point in time. Pages 6 to 8 and 9, we talk a fair bit about children's services and justice services, and why we think they should be, why we thought at the time they should be within the IJB, and why we believe that should continue to be the case, but only, however, if that remains at a very local level. We don't want to see that nationalised and the local control taken away. Children and young people are very much seen as partners within our service delivery and our planning, and our strength is very much in our embedded culture of working in partnership across our services, but also across our communities and families. I think there's an increasing recognition that closing the attainment gap, as we talk about, is not just a role for teachers and those working in education. It's very much across all the service areas that we talk about here. In relation to justice services and public protection, I've mentioned a fair bit about protection, but clearly justice services are a key part of that as well, and keeping that at a local level, but very much part of that integrated service delivery is something that we're really keen to see happen. Doesn't have to be part of a national care service. I think we can demonstrate within East Ayrshire we have a really strong local delivery model. I think we mentioned in paragraph 116 that members can transfer staff, property, etc. from local government to the new National Care Service, which I've mentioned previously, and that a real risk around about the investment over the next 4 or so years, particularly where there's a legacy cost to the council, but also where there's an opportunity cost, because sometimes decisions have to be taken. Do we invest here or over there? And that opportunity cost round about actually deciding where we're going to make the investment is something that needs to be considered in the context of where we'll be over the next 4 or so years as well. Talk next about care, integrated social care and health record. That's something I think that anybody who works in the sector would absolutely say would be of huge value. It's been a key ambition for many years for many people. It is, however, extremely challenging and resource intensive. There's a whole range of issues that we talk about paragraph 121, round about data protection, cyber security, systems failure risks, particularly if we put all our eggs in that one basket. Ensuring that people's information is protected is something that clearly we all have an absolute focus on. Some of the information in there is highly sensitive and we need to do all we can to protect that. There's a range of issues around about current contractual arrangements. If you look at the landscape across the whole of health and social care, there's a huge number of contracts in place that potentially have to be broken, and clearly there's a cost associated with that. So taking all of that into account, while we absolutely recognise the opportunities and the benefits of having that integrated approach, but rather than having a single system, our preferred approach would be to investigate the benefits of actually integrating the back-end functions of all of those legacy systems that are currently in place, joining them up and actually making them work much better than they do currently. The right to break for carers is something that we absolutely support, as not come as any surprise. The standard one-size-fits-all approach, however, is something that does give us concern. I think we need to reflect and continue to reflect very much the person-centred and local aspects round about all of this. We would also want to highlight the needs and circumstances of young carers. Absolutely required to be recognised here. They are different from adult unpaid carers in terms of our young carers. I know Mary and her team work really closely with a lot of our young carers and understand some of those views are very, very different, and we want to make sure that those young people were involved in the design of that service going forward. P72 talks about visits to care homes. That this is known as Anne's Law. It started to emerge during COVID, just in terms of the rights and the opportunities of the absolute ability for people to go and visit loved ones within a care home setting. It's really important to recognise that care homes are individuals' homes. We need to guard against them becoming clinical settings. We've taken great care to try and do that all the way through COVID and now. And the introduction of Anne's Law reflects that the overly clinical focus in care settings can have a negative impact as an unintended consequence of reducing risk and safeguarding. So we absolutely welcome and value what it says within there. But again, it's very much about the local part of it. So the local advice, local engagement with professionals through our care home oversight groups, etc., has been key to get us to where we are, and we need to make sure that can be maintained going forward. The final section of the response, before I'm happy to take any question, is round about the cancellation of care service registration and the assistance and inspections by HIS, sections 42 and 43 of the bill. So we welcome and agree with the focus on regulation and scrutiny, recognise this can help to secure consistent and high standards. We also agree that regulation should be undertaken independently. However, we also believe that national standards can be set and scrutinised without the need for the structural change that the care service is founded upon. Any implementation of powers to cancel the registration of a care service should involve the relevant care board. Currently, the local authority would act as a provider of last resort. However, within the proposed arrangements, councils would, where engaged, be designated as a provider of services, and we would absolutely need to understand who that provider of last resort would then be. Does that due to transfer across to care boards is probably the key question in there. There's a number of concerns around the ability of the care inspectorate to move directly to proposing to cancel a care services registration without first issuing an improvement notice, and further clarity in those circumstances that would lead to such action and intended support that can be provided to the care home would absolutely be required before we could comment further on that. Turning back to the recommendations, paragraph 2 of the covering report, most of them for noting just in terms of the care bill being laid before Parliament, the process to get to where we are, how we want to make this submission. Probably important thing is to note is recommendation 8. We're asking for Council today to agree the enclosed joint response, recognising it was agreed at the IJB last week. And if there are any further changes, to remit to myself and as the Chief Officer of the IJB and to Eddie, Chief Executive of the Council, just to finalise any final tweaks to ensure that we can incorporate any responses received today and make sure that's captured within the report. The intention would still be to submit a joint response, but clearly if there are significant differences start to emerge between a Council and an IJB response, part of that conversation may be that we have to split it. I think the benefit we've seen so far is that the joint response absolutely demonstrates how strong partnership works in East Ayrshire and the strength of an ability to submit a joint response. I think was absolutely recognised as being a key component of that. We're obviously happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Craig. Thank you to you, Marion, and all the rest of the team. You went through this with a fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass. Really pleased that IJB came to conclusions. There's very fair comments in here. Some folk have had the opportunities to discuss at those levels with IJB, but now it's members' opportunities to come. Can I ask Lynn and Julie if you could keep an eye on Teams and give me a shout if somebody wants to come in. So members, I'm going to open up for questions. Leader.
Thanks, Provost. It's a question, but I think I should maybe make a kind of statement just in terms of general direction of where I think we should go. It was really good to see the full IJB support the proposal that Craig's laid down here, and I think that's quite a comprehensive response of where we need to go. Just looking back at the fundamentals, we've been here before with the previous councillors, some of the members here will remember, and we managed to achieve a united response to the government, because we saw, well, that this has now been in the government's manifesto in terms of providing a care service, and we can understand why the government would want consistency and good and improvement in terms of delivery of care. This authority has probably led the way in terms of integration and going through change, and has significantly integrated a lot of its services and its money into this process and improvement. But we're concerned that general principles here. There's a lack of detail. There's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of local democracy in the process. And that's a big worry for us all. And some of the gains that we've made will be significantly eroded where we've embraced integration in the past and focused on outcomes for the people out there, the people receiving the care, which is where the focus should be. There's a number of things, but I think the report captured it all in full. But there's a complete lack of clarity in a lot of it. And that's where some of the difficulty lies. And between, as Craig mentioned, it's £250 million between the three Ayrshires. That's not an insignificant sum of money. But when we look at the number of people employed in the sector, that's not inconsequential either. And these people, particularly we saw under the COVID and the pandemic, these were the people to put their heads above the parapet and deliver services to our most vulnerable when there were still questions about their own safety. And these are some of the most lowest paid workers, and quite frankly, they don't deserve that uncertainty. And we need to support them where we can. So while there is obviously in terms of delivering care, there's a number of positive things and an attempt to address some of the issues we feel. But some of the things that, in terms of the care strategy, seems to go against some of the principles I feel, and particularly I think as Craig mentioned, where the people receiving care and where the carers fit in with this. It seems to be an omission, you know, and that's a worry as well, because that was one of the criticisms that Feely has of the current service. So our arrangements have worked really well, and I think we should continue to shout that from the rooftops, because that was, you know, a process in terms of embracing integration. But I think we need to voice our concerns, because and hopefully we can get united around this and support this response here. But one of the questions, you know, I would like to ask in terms of Craig, you know, what is the process now? I mean, we can simply respond to the consultation as laid down. But I think, you know, such as the strength of feeling that we had previously, and I hope that the new council, you know, reflects that as well. Where else can we go here to check this process and, you know, address some of the concerns that we've got in this response? You know, I know COSLA are doing some work, but where else can we go here with this, as well as the actual consultation itself?
Thanks. Do you want to take some more questions, or do you want to just come in, Everett? It's up to you.
Maybe respond to that one specifically, Provost, just in terms of what else can we do. So thanks for your comments, Leader, in terms of the specifics. I think we've probably captured that quite well within the response. But I suppose in terms of as a council, should you wish to escalate this and take it, where else can we go? So obviously we've had the consultation response which was submitted. Now this is a chance to have those views heard. The committee may ask people to come along and give further evidence, which will clearly be another opportunity to outline some of those concerns that you highlighted, should be invited along. Clearly there's also the opportunity as a council to write to the Cabinet Secretary, to write to the government round about any specific concerns you may also have. And as we move to the next phase of this, which is very much about the delivery phase, the government have given us reassurances that stakeholders, partners, everybody involved in this can be involved in the co-production, the co-delivery, co-design of what the new National Care Service will look like. That's the rationale for this being a framework bill, is that they want people to actually be involved in designing the detail round about it. So we will absolutely want to be involved in that part of it as well, which is where we hopefully can influence some of that future direction. But from a political point of view, I wouldn't imagine they're going to have a political position round about that sort of delivery part of it, although we've yet to see the detail on it. So from a political perspective, it's possibly, I'm not trying to suggest this is the only way forward, but perhaps that as a council, just sort of raising it to another notch, maybe something that you wish to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. And I would say, certainly on behalf of the Labour Group, we, I think, would hope that the council could speak as one, as we did previously in the last council. In the last council, in fact, two before, I think it was, the elections, where we debated this at length. And I get half of the council is new, but 16 of the current 32 are here or have been here. And I think we put political differences aside to make sure we were united in this, because actually the experience in East Ayrshire, why should we be penalised as an authority for perhaps some of the difficulties elsewhere in the country? But I think the three key points, and the council leader brought those out, and that they come across within the report and the response, was the lack of detail, the impact and the democratic accountability, and accountability in general. I think that the proposals as put before us aren't something we could accept, and I certainly would agree that we need to highlight this further. This is good that we are building on our position that we've already stated in terms of the consultation response. But what I would like to see is, indeed, perhaps we do write to the Minister, and this is, and I would hope, and we'll hear, I'm sure, from other parties, and those have none, to tell us what their views are. But I would like to see this council united in this, that our IJB works, and we are absolutely concerned. And I think it's a fair point to raise about the not insignificant number of workers that this has an impact on. And let's absolutely not forget they are amongst the lowest paid, those who are there throughout COVID. And absolutely, at the coalface, we must not forget that, and we cannot give them any more uncertainty in what is an already uncertain environment out there. So, I welcome the response, and anything we can do to highlight this further nationally and locally, certainly I would welcome the opportunity to do that. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks for that, Barry. I'm going to just carry on. Councillor Linton, and then it's Councillor Cogley and Councillor McFadden.
Thanks, Provost. As a former health and wellbeing spokesperson, I was involved right from the shadow period, the setting up of the IGIB, and both Barry and Dougie have mentioned the IGIB has always been fully supported by all the parties, and we should be rightly very proud of the service it's delivered to the residents of IGIB. And this isn't any fanciful nonsense. I think Craig touched on it's evidence-based. Any comparison statistics that are presented to IGIB and indeed at full council repeatedly show that East Ayrshire is performing at the very highest levels. We significantly outscore neighbouring IGIBs in terms of things like delayed discharge, our focus on early intervention, and the care, the fantastic care that the dedicated team give to people to live their lives at home rather than be put into nursing homes and indeed bed blocking in hospitals. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of, and I think it's absolutely correct that we take Craig's lead in this, and we've put up a very robust defence of what we consider to be an excellent service, and there's no evidence that what is intended to replace it will provide levels of the same service to the residents of East Ayrshire.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. Councillor Cogley.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Craig, thank you very much for your very damning critique of this proposed bill. And for those of us who've lived it for over a year now, I absolutely endorse the comments that you've made and will support the combined approach. And I think we know through how we function that if there is a genuine desire to improve the service provision, for us, it can best be done through our present mechanisms, but with additional resources. And to me, it seems that this bill is not about improving service provision, and that it's about the disintegration of local, and it's about nationalisation. And I think that we should reject it wholly. And I think that we should look at every opportunity that we can to escalate it. And I think we should do our best to reject this bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Councillor McFadden.
Without wishing to repeat everything that's been said, I'd like to say that, you know, as a group, I think we agree and totally support what's been said. And, you know, why can't we lobby all our local MSPs and take it up further and try and get the whole bill overturned? I mean, it's not necessary. I think it's really is a complete waste of time, and just be far better to sort out the issues with the IGIBs that aren't performing, using this as our own one as a model, because I think it's perfectly adequate services we've got, and I'm very proud of what we do here.
Members, if there's no one else, I think there was some discussion. Leader, yep.
It's just to kind of capture some of the discussion in terms of adding to recommendations. Can I maybe suggest that we do write to the Cabinet Secretary and copy to our local MSPs? And I'm wondering, would it be appropriate for us to offer to give evidence as a local authority? Well, if we can do that, I would like to see them face to face, absolutely, and don't know whether it be a delegation from the authority or whoever.
Barry.
Provost, I would absolutely second what the council leader has said.
Councillor Cogley, I'm going to bring Craig in, and then we'll let you on. Craig.
Just on that specific point, Provost, I think, yeah, absolutely, if we write to Cabinet Secretary, but I think we should also, if we're copied to MSPs, perhaps write to the chair of the Health, Social Care and Sports Committee and offer, because I think they'll be looking for evidence. So I think if we offer ourselves up to be somebody to go along and provide that evidence at a political level, at an officer level, I think Eddie, myself, others will clearly be happy to go along and do that. So I think in terms of that approach, we'd be happy to support that however we can, to make sure that we get our foot in the door.
No, thanks for that, Craig. Sally, you proposed something different, I believe.
Well, just to come back in on the...
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sorry. What are the mechanisms for challenging the bill legally, and is that something that we should be considering?
David in for that one.
In the broadest terms, there would need to be legal grounds to challenge the bill. The bill is in the legislative process. There would need to be the identification of some material flaw in the bill or the construct of the bill, because the only potential challenge legally would be a judicial review, and judicial review would be based on some deficiency within the proposals. Either they're not competent because they're beyond the competence of the government in the sense of the devolution arrangements, or that they have failed to take account of, or it's ultra vires, it's beyond their powers. But my understanding is there is no hint or suggestion from anyone that legally they aren't in a position to bring this forward. The actual the bill is all about the how. The bill is basically a rewrite of the Local Government Scotland Act 1994 in terms of all the key constituent elements and all the provisions been made: transfer of buildings, transfer of staff, transfer of liabilities, assignation of interests and contracts. It's all there. It's the mechanics. It's sending in the tanks. The bill is the setting out how this will be delivered. The bill doesn't seek to make the argument of why it should be delivered or involve further debate around the policy. It involves comment on the process, but the real areas people want to comment on, the bill is silent on, because what the bill sets out is how this will be delivered. The why has already been in earlier debate, and the detail will follow in the secondary legislation, which is one of the problems. But it's not about tilting at windmills and raising a legal challenge simply because an organisation doesn't like legislation. There would need to be deficiencies and legal grounds to challenge, and I'm not aware of a hint from anywhere in the country or from anyone who's opposed to this in any of the pressure groups. Pressure groups may be the wrong word, but there are groups that have been set up providing very considered and detailed commentary in this, and I'm simply not aware from any source that there's any suggestion it's not legally competent. If it's legally competent, you would be struggling to come up with grounds of a legal challenge. This is something that's about policy, politics, and it is about trying to maintain the debate. But let's be absolutely honest, local government is on the back foot now because this is moving forward, and while we all would wish to maintain that debate, it's actually starting to take shape at the very early stages, because this is just this bill. So the way to oppose it, the word used was to reject, but it's not in the gift of any organisation or individual citizen to reject legislation. Only the legislator can reject legislative proposals and not pass the act. So the only way to keep the pressure on and to keep maintaining this council's fundamental position that this whole suite of changes are not necessary on a national basis is to keep maintaining that position in the responses, and, as said, by all means engage with other MSPs. But the legislation and the proposals that have gone this far have been approved by at least some of those MSPs. That's the reality of it. I'm not opening up the politics. That's the reality of it. But yes, we should express our concerns to anyone and everyone who might be in a position to help. But the fundamental point is a legal challenge would need to be based on legal grounds. And I'm not even aware of any suggestion that there's any flaw in the approach from a legal or governance perspective. The perceived flaw is in, and this is going into the political domain, the lack of merit to the proposals that are being legislated for.
Okay, Sally.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I guess the only thing that I would suggest, if there is any scope, is the lack of consultation, because the consultation was quite a bizarre process. And I don't know if there's any scope within that for us to make any kind of challenge.
Okay, no, thank you. Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Provost. The three main political parties have stated their view. As an independent, I fully support the council in whatever action you take to deem necessary to put this through. So I fully support it as an independent too, what we're doing here. Thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Just coming back in the Councillor Cogley's point about the lack of consultation, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I sat in a Teams meeting that lasted, I think it was about two and a half hours. And there was about 600 people who are involved in social care were on that Teams meeting. There was 2 ladies from the Scottish Government that were holding the meeting, and basically the meeting just threw up, hundreds of questions. The teams, the right hand side of the Teams meeting went ballistic with people involved in social care putting certain, questions that affect them, great questions into the meeting. And basically the Scottish Government representatives that were chairing the meeting said that every single person that was on that Teams call would receive a full question and answer response by email, which as yet I haven't received. But just to say to Councillor Cogley that the consultation process it's still ongoing, and as I say, I'm still waiting on all of the answers to the questions that were raised during that meeting coming out to me by email.
No, thanks for that information, David. That was interesting. Folks, the leader has proposed a set of proposals to go back to the Scottish Government on this issue. Are you happy with the way we're going to go forward as East Ayrshire Council in replying to this document? I can't see anybody. But yeah, everybody got thumbs up. Yeah, is that okay, everyone? Thanks. That was really interesting. And this is a whole body of work. And as everyone has said, we unfortunately find ourselves victims of our success with the way that the Health and Social Care Partnership was, number one, set up, and number two, how it was implemented from 2014. And we are rightly proud of that. And I think we need to, as Dougie said, shout from the rooftops. Yeah, Ian.
I think what you're saying is absolutely right, Jim, and I think we should actually flag up that we were the first IJB to be set up in Scotland. I think we've got a lead role in defending what we see as being an excellent body of work that's been carried out by all the staff involved over the years and taking forward our IJB. I mean, I think the work that goes on in East Ayrshire is exemplary.
No, thanks for that. I think you had Barry.
Sorry, Prof, just Councillor Linton made me have a thought there of perhaps we should maybe, whilst we write to Cabinet Secretary and write to MSPs for our constituency area and south of Scotland, perhaps we should invite those MSPs to come and have a look for themselves at some of the work they do. I'm sure many will be absolutely aware, but it would maybe be worth, introducing that into the mix.
Well, that could form part of. We're making all the decisions here. Are the officers happy with what's been proposed today? Is it giving you a lot of work, or are you happy with?
Yeah. So in terms of the right to and giving evidence, etc., we would always, so if an officer was invited to go and give it, we would always want to give evidence to the committee anyway, so there's no work. In terms of welcoming people here to see what we do and to sell the story, we are happy to take any visit at any time round about. So clearly if there's to be a programme put together round about visits, we can do that, we can plan round about it, but I think we've had different people who see different parts of the service at different times, and people typically like what they see, so they're happy to engage at all in any way we can get the support round about this.
Thanks for that, Craig, and I can encourage members, if there are any specific parts of the document that you feel really strongly about, get a hold of Craig and the team to make sure that goes to the front of any layout of the position that we find ourselves in when they meet officers. I am happy to open and welcome MSPs if that's what you would like. It's up to the individual MSPs whether they come or not, of course. But if you want to send out an invitation from the council to the MSPs to come along to hear, we'll find out what the protocol is for that and what the processes are, and if it works. Is that acceptable? Okay, David, yeah.
Just to confirm then for the purpose of the minute that what's been agreed by all members as in terms of recommendations, acceptance of all the recommendations, which allows the strong joint response from IJB and Council to go as is, but with additional agreed action that will draft letters, or the letter will go from the leader to relevant ministers, setting out almost as a political organisation, the serious political concerns and real concerns and operational concerns the council has over and above the detail of the response, and that will be copied to MSPs. I think it would just be a general invite at that point. If they want to come and see what we do, we would apply the protocols for visits to specific premises at that point. But I think that's the gist of it. It's what's in front of you, plus the additional measure of setting out the council's concerns on the politics of this in terms of, and the impact of this. on the local area, and the lack of recognition of the council's previous delivery record before this was inflicted or may yet be inflicted upon the area. So it's an add-on plus, and we'll draft those, and obviously the leader will make arrangements to agree those with other group leaders to make sure they reflect the views of council before they're issued.
Yeah.
The offer to give parliamentary evidence.
Aye, we'll include that. I think it's usually the other way around. They're usually struggling to get volunteers. So we'll just confirm, I presume we'll just confirm when we submit the joint response that officers from the council and IJB would be happy to give evidence to the committee at the next stage, reflective of the content of the response.
Thanks for that. Right, thanks, folks. I think we've come to a conclusion and we're all in agreement. That's the way forward. So look forward. And again, if anybody feels really strongly about certain items, please raise them with Craig and Marion and the team. Right, thanks, folks. That was a very good discussion. We're going to item 6, which is in exclusion of press and public. Okay, David?
Sorry,
no, good.
Sorry, Paul.
It's well, way ahead of the game. Yeah, could we stop recording, please, Robert? Thank you very much. Can I just say to folks, we're going to bring this item, and it's an important item, but there were some